The most common question that people ask when meeting someone for the first time is, "What do you do?" Do you know how to answer that question? Do you know how to answer when someone else asks you that question? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Not just how to ask in a natural way, not just how to answer if someone asks you, but how to actually practice this in a real situation using ChatGPT. You can practice it anytime. It is very useful, and I'm going to show you how. If you have any questions as we go, leave those in the comments. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And now let's get into it. One of the challenging things about improving your spoken fluency is getting enough practice. You know, everybody knows if you have more conversations socially, even if it's small talk, you're going to improve your confidence, probably improve your fluency over time. But we don't always have a way to have those conversations, to practice those. And so only recently did it become possible to have an anytime conversation partner with AI. Now, I believe that for those not yet really using things like ChatGPT or Google Bard, find a way to start using something, because the advantages that you get are huge, and it's only going to get more and more useful over time. And so the people who are using it compared to those not using it will, the gap between them will continue to grow. And, in 5 years, it will be almost funny, the people who are using it versus those who are not, in my opinion, my humble opinion. So we're going to practice having a conversation, a small talk conversation, in as realistic a way as we possibly can using ChatGPT. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at the prompt, I'm going to share the prompt, and then we're going to have the conversation. Now, you can't plan things with ChatGPT, so it is what it is. We'll get what we get. So there we have to put as much effort as we can into the prompt. That's why the prompt is so important, right? So here's the prompt that I'm using. Let's have a realistic dialogue based on the situation I provide. You'll play the role of Lisa, and I will be myself. So I'm me. Shock, I know. We haven't met each other before this conversation. The setting is an art gallery event in New York City, bustling with people mingling and engaging in conversations. Start the conversation by asking, "So what do you do?" The conversation should proceed naturally from there. Respond to my questions in a realistic way and ask me follow-up questions based on my responses. The aim is to keep the conversation realistic and engaging. If you understand the situation, please confirm by saying, "I understand," and then wait for me to initiate the conversation with "Let's begin." Okay, so many conversations with people you haven't met yet start with "What do you do?" It may be one of the most common, it's probably the most common way to begin a conversation with a stranger or someone you don't know. What do you do? And so let's start with that, right? This is going to be a realistic conversation, as realistic as it can be. Now, what we should get here is "I understand" and nothing else. That's what I want to see. And that's what we get. Okay, now we want to have a real conversation, right? So what we do is go over to the app. So we go over to the app. here we are in the app on my phone. And I'm going to hit stop because I want to find the chat. We need to go to the chat. Hold on. Let me find the chat quickly on my phone, the recent chat that we just did. And then we can begin that. I have to reload it. Where is it? Hold on. Hold on. Yes, reload. Reload. Hello. Oh, here we go. Found it. Okay. All right. So now we have the chat open. We can see what we can see the prompt and the I understand. Okay, now what we want to do is begin the conversation. And remember, my trigger is let's begin. Let's begin.
So what do you do?
I am an English teacher. I actually make courses online. How about you?
That's interesting. I work as a graphic designer, mainly focusing on digital media. It's always fascinating to meet someone involved in education, especially in the online space. What made you choose to teach English online?
Well, actually, let me ask you. So, how did you get into graphic design and design? I'm quite curious. It's a pretty common job, but I know it's rapidly changing and often challenging. Do you work freelance? Well, I guess I should just ask one question. How did you get into it?
I've always been passionate about art and design. Initially, I started with traditional drawing and painting, but as technology evolved, I found myself drawn to digital art. I studied graphic design in college and started freelancing after graduation. Eventually, I transitioned to a full-time position at a design firm. The field is indeed rapidly changing, but that's part of what makes it exciting. You mentioned you're an English teacher creating online courses. How do you find that experience compared to traditional teaching?
Well, I think it's a lot more creative. I know that in traditional teaching, for example, in K through 12, you get a lot of rules and you have to follow a particular curriculum. When you teach online in particular, especially if you're helping adults learn something, you get to be a little bit more innovative. I find textbooks can be a little bit outdated and not very useful or realistic. So for something like online teaching, especially for English or languages, you need to be creative, you need to be innovative, because that's the only thing that stays current, and that's the only thing that actually, in my opinion, helps people.
That makes a lot of sense. The flexibility and creativity in online teaching sound really rewarding, especially when it comes to language learning. It must be fulfilling to create content that directly meets the needs of your students. With the world being so digitally connected, I imagine there's a great demand for innovative language learning methods. Do you focus on any particular aspect of English teaching, like business English or conversational skills?
Well, both business English, conversation skills, pronunciation, a bunch of different areas, but the thing I think that's interesting is that it's competitive. In a traditional school, there isn't a lot of competition, but among people teaching online, it's a marketplace, and so it has to actually be good and be useful in order to compete in the marketplace, right? People speak with their wallets, and I think that's a good thing. So for design, is there a future for you to maybe leverage design skills to shift to another area, or do you think you'll stick with graphic design? What are your future ambitions?
The competitive aspect of online teaching sounds both challenging and motivating. It's great that it pushes for quality and innovation. As for my career in design, the field is so broad that there's always room to explore and grow. I've considered branching into user experience UX design. It's a field that combines technology, psychology, and design, focusing on creating meaningful and accessible digital experiences. Long term, I'd love to work on projects that blend my love for art with technology, perhaps in virtual or augmented reality settings. The digital world is evolving rapidly, so I'm excited to see where it takes me. Speaking of ambitions and future plans, where do you see your online teaching heading in the next few years? Do you have any specific goals or projects in mind?
Well, I would really love to find or continue to innovate and find new ways to share information. I think that things like the metaverse are in the early days, but as AI starts to really get good and as virtual reality becomes maybe a compelling experience, I think there will be new and very exciting ways to not just share information, but communicate, to teach, and to help people in a way that really works.
That sounds incredibly forward thinking and exciting. The potential of the metaverse and AI in education could revolutionize how we learn and interact. It's thrilling to think about the immersive and interactive experiences you could create for language learning. The blend of technology and education seems to be a space ripe for innovation. Do you envision yourself creating content for these new platforms, or perhaps collaborating with tech companies to develop educational tools? It seems like there's a lot of potential for someone with your background and vision in these emerging fields.
Okay. So now we get a transcript of the whole thing. I think the conversation went reasonably well. There are always ways to tweak it. For example, if I want just to practice speaking and I don't want to listen to a lot, then I would say something like, help me by only asking questions. Specify in the prompt that it's just questions and you will be answering all the questions. However, if you want it to be more like, and I'm not saying it's 100% realistic, if you want it to be more like a real conversation, I think the back and forth is very interesting, where I ask questions and I listen to the responses, and there's something more realistic in that which simulates a real conversation. So if you were practicing, let's say, meeting people, whether you have social anxiety or you just want to practice your communication conversation skills in English, or you want to know how to talk about different areas, you would maybe adjust the prompt slightly depending on each case, right? So I'm not saying, use this, just copy and paste it. I think learning how to prompt is a really key skill. If you figure out what works for what you need and you're able to tune the prompt, then you can have really helpful conversations. I thought that one went pretty well, but I will provide the prompt if you want to try it yourself. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe. Feel free to ask any questions if you have them, and check out my free course in the links in the description.